frame. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Camera, please, so down me again. So back with this look, I made a video on TikTok showcasing this Valentine's Day look that I had recorded for y'all, and unfortunately my camera had died on me. So today, the camera is fully charged. I'm paying attention to my monitors, making sure that I'm in frame and that it's recording at all times. I'm gonna be checking my monitor frequently throughout recording this video to make sure y'all don't miss a thing. All right, getting into my brows. I normally don't do my brows in the video, but I guess I can showcase this to y'all. So normally I just wipe off my brows because I am an oily girl. I always like to wipe off my brows. That way I can get all of the excess oil. Now I'm going in with my Got2B Glued. I love using this for my brows. I feel like this just lays my brow hairs down perfectly. Everything else I tend to use, or everything else that I've ever used for my brows just don't work the same. So I'm going to take a little bit of that and brush that through my hands. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at the mirror to make sure I'm just doing everything. I like to brush that every which way through my brows first. Make sure I coat all of the brow hairs. And then I brush it up and let it sit for about a minute. I do the same thing to each brow. Now that I have allowed that product to sit on my brows for about a minute or two, I'm just going to brush my brow hairs upwards. Following that with my pinky finger, and that way the brow hairs are laid down. It's gonna look something like that. You don't want this to dry down to where it gets too tacky and then your brows turn white. And I'm so particular about how my brow hairs look. It's crazy. I'm like OCD about it. I'm just going to shape my brows and just curve them using my spoolie. And any excess product, I just wipe that off with finger or a paper towel. Now that my brows are laid down, I'm gonna go in with some primer. I'm using the Jelly Top from e.l.f. and I'm just priming basically the top half of my face because that's what I'm gonna start on. I'm gonna start on my brows. I've always been like a brows first kind of girl. After applying my primer, I like to go in with some powder and I like to set my brows. That way when I fill in my brows, the pencil applies more evenly. And this powder just absorbs any of the excess oil that's on my skin or my brows. Going in with my NYX Precision Brow Pencil in the shade Espresso, I'm gonna lightly fill in my brows, following the natural shape of my brow. I just want to apologize for my audio. I did not realize it was this bad until after I finished recording and started to edit the video. I didn't realize that I actually hooked up my mic wrong to my camera, so that's why the audio quality is like really bad. But later in the video, I end up switching to a voiceover so you guys can hear me more clearly. Okay, now that my brows are filled in, I know they look kind of crazy right now, but I'm going to clean them up. Trust me, it's going to look 10 times better. I'm going to conceal them. All of the products that I'm using is going to be in the description box, so make sure you check that out. I cannot talk when I'm doing my eyebrows. I gotta stay focused. So y'all just gotta watch me do what I do. I know someone's gonna ask, so I want to tell y'all right here where I'm carving out the top of my brow. I am using my foundation. That way it's closer to my skin complexion and I don't have that weird like highlighter effect above my brow from using a lighter shade. Now the brows are filled in, I'm just going to buff out this concealer around the edges. The brush I'm using is a Real Techniques brush. You notice how I didn't go all the way to the front with my concealer in the front of my brow? That's because that's going to help with our nose contour later. And I like for it to be a smooth transition between the concealer as well as with the bronzer that I'm going to apply later. And that is how I do my highly requested brows. And for the rest of my face, I'm just going to do a voiceover, y'all, because it's going to be easy to really direct it. It really explain it. Starting off, I'm going to prime my skin using e.l.f.'s Jelly Pop Dupe Primer, and I absolutely love this primer. My foundation sticks very well to my skin and lasts all day when I'm using this primer. I also love that this primer has niacinamide in it, which is really, really good for the skin. So it's like skincare and primer all in one. Next, I'm going to go in with my One Size Oil Sucker Primer. I'm focusing this on my T-zone. I really like to focus this primer on the places where I get oily, so that way throughout the day when I'm producing oils, it sucks up all those oils and I stay matte mostly throughout the day. Using a powder puff, I'm setting my smile lines in those oily areas with some translucent powder from One Size. I'm mixing 2 of One Size's foundation in the shade 25 Neutral and 35 Neutral Golden. These 2 foundation shades give me the perfect shade match. These 2 foundation shades are so different from each other. I feel like One Size really needs to extend their foundation shade range. The formula and the wear of this foundation is amazing. I just feel like they need more shades, especially for the deeper complexions. Before I blended out my foundation, I love to go in with the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray infused with hyaluronic acid and watermelon extract. This just gives me the perfect and seamless blend with my foundation. I love to blend out my foundation using a damp beauty sponge. For my cream bronzer, I'm using Nars in the shade Laguna 4, and when I tell y'all, I absolutely love this cream bronzer. It blends so beautifully, it's super creamy, and it's the perfect shade for my skin tone. I also like to apply this bronzer to the outer corner of my eye. This gives me a more lifted effect. To blend out my bronzer, I'm using the Real Techniques Insta Pop Cheek Brush, and I'm using patting motions. I'm keeping that bronzer high up on the cheekbone because I like the more lifted effect. To blend out the outer corner of my eye, I'm using light flaking motions while also slightly blending that into my temples. Using the same patting motion, I'm blending that cream bronzer on my forehead and slightly blending that into my hairline, but not too much because I don't really like product in my hairline. When it comes to blending out my nose contour, I like to use that same Instapop cheek brush and lightly to use tapping motions to blend it up into the beginning of my brow, which is why I did not fill in the beginning of my brow with concealer. A new fave of mine has been this curved case made by Mitchell. I absolutely love using the blush shades. I'm using that deeper orange and that more mauve pink, and I'm mixing that together. Trust me, when you're using this, a little bit goes a long way. Moving on to concealer, I mixed 2 different concealers, Toofaced Born This Way and Lancome's Teinte Idole. I absolutely love the formula I get when I mix these 2 concealers together. For the placement of the concealer, I like to take it along the sides of my nose and make a little triangle shape, taking that underneath my eye, and then I carve out the outer corner of my eye, giving more of that lifted effect using my flat concealer brush. Now I'm just placing that same concealer above my cupid's bow, my chin, my forehead. I brought it up a little bit too high on my forehead, but that's okay because it blended out perfectly. And I make a small little line down the bridge of my nose. So using my concealer buffer brush from Real Techniques, I'm just buffing out my chin, and then I like to take that same damn beauty sponge that I use for my foundation. I just buff around the edges of that concealer, that way I get a seamless blend. Taking that same buffer brush, I'm just using patting motions and I'm blending out my forehead. I always like to take my time when blending out my makeup and make sure I get a seamless blend. I don't like that line of demarcation. To blend out the edges of that concealer on my forehead, I'm using that same brush that I use to blend out my cream bronzer, and I'm just patting around the edges of that concealer, that way I get a more seamless blend. You see how everything looks so smooth and blurred? When blending out your makeup, be sure to take your absolute time. Sometimes you just need to sit there and make sure everything looks really seamless. When it comes to blending out my under eye, I am always going to be a sponge girl. I know a lot of girls like to use brushes. I've used brushes in the past, but nothing gives me the same look that a sponge does. When you let your makeup sit for at least a good minute or 2 and let it dry down a bit, going back in with a damp beauty sponge just give you that airbrush effect. Now I just like to brighten up my inner corner of my eyes, so I'm going in with the lighter concealer by Too Faced. I'm letting that concealer sit for about a minute, and in the meantime I'm just reinforcing that blush. I lost some of it when I blended out my concealer from before, and I'm just using all of the excess that I had left over on that palette. For a brighter under eye, I like to keep the concealer more towards the inner corner. I'm just going to buff out the edges of that concealer so I get a more seamless blend with that same buffer brush that I used earlier for my cheeks. And look at how seamless that looks. Look at the difference from the side that I buffed and the side that I didn't. This base looks absolutely flawless, and I haven't even set it. Like, look at that. Now I'm going in with my Huda Beauty's Banana Bread setting powder. I like to dab that on the back of my hand so I can get an even blend, and I'm just patting that where I set my concealer. I didn't show this, but be sure sure to always blend out your under eye with that same beauty sponge to get rid of any creasing before you set it with your powder. Now I'm just going in with some translucent powder from Onesize, and I'm setting all of those concealed areas, my cupid's bow, my chin, my forehead, and also down the bridge of my nose. I also like to take the excess powder on that powder puff and I like to dab it across my entire nose. That way I get a more softer nose contour. Using my Micro Smooth Finishing Powder by Sephora, I'm just going to set my entire face. I'm just bronzing my entire face wherever I put that cream bronzer except for my nose. I'm using the Juvia's Place Bronzer Duo Palette. I used to not like this Bronzer Duo Palette. I thought that it made my makeup really muddy, but I noticed a little bit goes a long way. I tried it out again and now I am in love. To make sure I get that more snatched appearance, I like to carve out my cheekbones using the Onesize translucent powder, and I just allowed that to sit for a little bit. Now getting into powder blush, I have been loving this combo lately. I use the Juvia's Place Blush Duo Palette. I use the orange shade and then I layer the Dolce Vita blush by Nars right on top of that. I did not show the Dolce Vita blush, but I promise y'all these two together are so gorgeous. Now to finish off my nose contour, I'm using a shade out of the Beauty by Melissa Wildside palette, and then here I noticed that I did not set my under eye where that concealer was, so I did that with some translucent powder, and that same shade that I used for my nose contour, I'm also blending that in my crease. And if you notice, for this look I did not put concealer all over my eyelid because I did not need it for this look. Before finishing my eyeshadow look, I'm just buffing away all of that excess translucent powder I allowed to sit, and I'm using that same powder brush that I used earlier, and look at how beautiful that inner corner looks. It's nice and bright and beautiful. And here I'm just showing you the two shades that I used for my eyeshadow. I used the lighter shade for my nose contour as well as my crease color, and the darker shade I'm using right here to smoke out my outer corner. Using my Jaclyn Hill palette by Morphe, I'm taking the shade Boo Bear to further smoke out the outer corner. I'm using a really flat skinny brush to give me like a smoked out wing liner using the brush. This method gives you the perfect smoked out wing liner without having to use an actual liquid liner. Now I'm using the Moon Dust from Urban Decay in the shade Space Cow. This gives you the look of doing a lot when you really did put too much effort in it. For my pink waterline, I'm using a pink gel liner from Colourpop, and I absolutely love how these apply. Now I'm using a soft pink shade in that same Wildside palette from Beauty by Melissa, and I'm just placing that in the inner corner. Now I'm popping on my lashes in the style Rome from Lilly Lashes. I absolutely love these lashes, but I did not realize until the end of this video that my right lash, no, not my right, my left lash was not really placed on correctly in the front, but that's okay. It still turned out really, really cute. To set my face, I always use two setting sprays. Today I'm using the Urban Decay All Nighter Spray as well as Onesize Until Dawn, and I absolutely love Onesize Until Dawn. It literally is my fave. And then after I set my face, I always take a powder puff and reinforce that madness just by using all the excess powder on that powder puff and pat around my T-zone where I normally get oily. So lately this has been my absolutely favorite lip combo to do. I start off by using Colourpop's lip pencil in the shade Pitch, and I buff that out using a brush. Using a paper towel, I like to remove any of that excess lip liner from the center of my lips. That way I get that more pigmented shade from this lipstick from the Lip Bar. It's in the shade Bear Me, and when I tell y'all, this nourishing lipstick is so cute. If you wanted to, you can just stop by using that lip liner and that lipstick. It eats either way, but I wanted to add a touch more pink and brighten it with this NYX Butter Gloss. Okay girls, this is the final look. I'm so glad that I was able to get this look finished for y'all. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Also click that bell notification so you can stay notified of all of my upcoming tutorials and vlogs and posts and everything like that. Again, I am so glad that I was able to finish recording this for you. I hope you enjoyed this look. I can't wait to see you guys' recreations. Make sure you tag me on my Instagram or my TikTok. Alright girls, I'll catch you on next one.